So hi, my name's Duncan from SSW, and today we have an interview with Justin Schwartzenberger about how to become a front-end developer. And I really wanted to interview Justin about this because it's something that's close to heart for myself, about getting into the industry and some tips and tricks on what you should and shouldn't do when you're starting out. So I'd like to welcome on our guest today, Justin. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. You've just started a new course on Pluralsight about this topic and becoming a front-end developer. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. I just launched a course a little bit ago, a couple months ago, called Front-End Web Developer Career Kickstart. And it really takes a look at, let's say you've learned the front-end trifecta of languages of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but really what else do you need to know if you want to kickstart your career doing front-end web development? Basically like a blueprint for the entire map of all the things that you really need to kind of get in and understand and start exploring to really tie it all together to be ready to launch a career in front-end development.
Awesome. So, I mean, you're an experienced developer. You've been, in the industry for a while now. What made you want to make a course like this?
It's kind of like you. It's a passion of mine, front-end development. I love the space. I love web development. The fact that you can get in there and really control and start seeing all kind of, you can start writing code, you can start playing with look and feel, and you can get a response and visual of what you're working on right away. It's such a great space to be in. And I really wanted to provide some help and guidance to teaching people about how to on-ramp onto this career and what you really need to know. There's a lot of boot camps going on right now, a lot of courses and all this material for getting people ramped up with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS and getting into this space. But there's so much more to know about the landscape of it. And I really just wanted to bring my experience and my passion for it and try and help people and guide people into the topics and things they should look into learning and knowing alongside of that to really be prepared to, once you jump in and take a position or try and get a position doing front-end web development, what are you going to need to know and bring as a tool set on a day-to-day basis to really get going? Because it's so much more than just being able to write JavaScript in an isolated file or CSS, that sort of thing,
Yeah, it's very interesting hearing you talk right now, because that's kind of been my story, has been to learn lots at home and then turn up to a boot camp we have here in Sydney called Fire Boot Camp, and then start working. And I've got a ton of questions for you today around kind of even as someone who's already going down that track a bit further now, about what you should do when you're new in a career, but also about I get asked these questions all the time from people who go, oh, so Duncan, you've just done this sort of career change, and what do you think about this, or how should I get my first job? I'd still get emailed, I reckon, every week by people asking about that.
Wow.
So this is a really good topic that's also close to my heart as well. So I'm looking forward to picking your brains.
Cool. Yeah, that's good.
So where to start off? I guess where would someone? What's the first thing someone should do? Should we be talking about when someone first starts off in the industry, as in they've done a boot camp, or choosing a boot camp? I mean, where do you see most people start off?
I think most people are jumping into the boot camp. And that's kind of the core, right? But I don't know if there's a gap right now in that teaching or whatnot. But you really need to fill in, okay, I've got that. Now I've got to get an understanding of how do I use that in a project? How do I use that in a team? How does that apply to building a website or a web application? What are the tooling and stuff around that's needed? And then really understanding the language of the web, all the components, all the pieces. That's really those three languages are the front end side. You got the whole back end server side that's delivering that's running a site. You got the transport between the two. you've got domain names, you've got tooling, your IDEs, your text editors, all that stuff, data layer, all that stuff comes into play. I mean, if you want to focus on doing front-end development, you're not really necessarily going to have to master any of those, but you have to be aware of them because they all tie together and they all have some sort of impact on the decisions you make when you're doing front-end development.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that can be so overwhelming when you're learning to be a front-end developer is that you feel confident in your decisions. I'm going to become really good at learning JavaScript and HTML, but you know, which backend will I use? Will I use Node, or will I use .NET, or will I use a myriad of other things? And you know, where will I host my applications, and what will I use as my IDE? And all these choices that you're talking about, I think people find kind of overwhelming. And even as a developer, you find overwhelming choosing a front-end framework. So there's lots of decisions to make. So what sort of advice do you give there for people when they're starting out? How do you stay focused when you're, you know, learning from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a really good question because there is so much, right? But that's also part of the thing that I think that you have to embrace if you're coming into the industry and you're going to be a part of it, right? One of the biggest things that is known in this industry, it's an industry of change, of rapid change, right? Nonstop, every day, something new's coming out, all the way down from frameworks to front-end code, all the way down to our IDEs and text editors, right? And code editors, something new all the time. And that's exciting. And we want to embrace that, and we want to look forward to that and see how we can leverage that, right? So I don't know that you really escape in terms of being able to focus on one particular thing, because you do want to be able to adapt to any of those things that come down the pipe, right? But a lot of like the boot camps, they'll guide you to, okay, we're going to use Sublime, and we're going to use Ruby on Rails for our backend, and we're going to kind of just get started, right? And that's great, but understanding that like there's other options besides that, right? And getting around and playing with, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, if I'm using Ruby on Rails to serve up some API that, as I'm building this front end, right? What other options are there to serve up an API? And what other IDEs are there besides just Sublime? And you know, well, that in that terms, that's a text editor, right? So what other text editors are there, and what is an IDE? Kind of exploring those sort of things to really get an understanding of what your tool set is called, what your options are, you know, what this piece is doing, what that piece is doing. Yeah. So I guess, you know, you can focus on, let's say you do a boot camp, you do like Ruby on Rails, Sublime, right? Focus on that, but get landscape of it all.
Yeah, because it's
and then sorry.
That's definitely something I really struggled with. And I remember when when I was at home, I was learning lots of stuff, and I was learning a bit of Node and doing a bit of MeanStack and doing a bunch of .NET backend stuff, and I was kind of, you know, exploring around with all of them. And then I signed up to do Fire Bootcamp, and they're like, oh, look, you're going to be doing .NET stuff, so just focus on that. And that really helped to kind of go, okay, this is going to be my stack for a while, and I could kind of tune down the noise. And I found that really useful to be able to do that, because you know, I'd be like jumping from learning, you know, Node backend to then a .NET backend from, you know, over the course of a week, and my brain would just be exploding with so much information that I really found that quite a useful time. Whereas, you know, now if I'm like at work, I use .NET on the backend, but if I'm going to be doing something else, then I might play around with some Node, and I find it really refreshing to mix around. But while I was learning, I found it such a helpful thing to have a bit of a kind of a guidance on that, to be able to say, okay, for a little bit, this is kind of what it is to focus on.
Right.
Is that such a good idea?
Absolutely.
You think,
yeah, I think you have to, because I mean, really, the focus is on learning front-end development, right? So you want to you have to kind of, I mean, in tech and all this stuff, right? There's other pieces that make up the entire puzzle, right? So you got to fill in these pieces with something, and it's kind of like anytime you even teach something. When I look to teach something, some tech or something to somebody, there's some stuff that you just got to kind of say, okay, well, this is what we're riding with, this is what we're doing, because this is not the focus of what we're learning, right? We're learning this over here, so let's just go ahead and use this over here. So you absolutely have to do that in terms of trying to pick up and learn knowledge on a particular topic or subject, right? but I guess having an understanding of what this is kind of about, right? And worry about it coming into the details later on that. Just like you said, you know, once you get into it and you kind of want to start playing with it, once you learn the front end, now you want to play more with different back end stuff and see how it equates. But just not turning a blind eye to it and letting it go, oh, this is black magic over here happening, right? And we'll just let it happen. Just kind of trying to dig in briefly and have an idea of what does that mean and what role is that playing as I do this other stuff, so I can keep it fresh in my mind when it's time to start bringing it all together.
So as a front-end developer then, how much time would you spend learning back-end stuff? Like, would you say you just kind of watch a brief video that explains how it works and what's unique about its, you know, key pieces, or would you actually get in there and do a hello world on some of these?
As far as starting out, if you're starting out learning, or is that what you're referring to?
I guess if you're going to be a front-end developer and you need a back-end at the very least just to serve up some information so you can start learning on the front end and start applying that knowledge. Let's say you choose one and you've gotten a certain way down the road and you're comfortable with it, and you're suggesting to have kind of a breadth of understanding of different stacks.
Right.
Would you go as far as doing a hello world with those and making a small project, or are you more just suggesting just kind of have a breeze through their documentation and understand the differences?
Well, I would lean towards having a Hello World project. You know, projects are so key, especially breaking into the industry. And I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because that's a really important part in terms of what do you need to know to really and learn about to really kickstart your career, right? And when you take on a project and you use that as an example and you're playing with that, it gives you the opportunity to sew all that together, right? And maybe you don't go too in depth in the back end, and it's just something that's simply serving up data. But if you have to get that set up to at least serve that data up and wire into your front end stuff, you've got an experience of what that project as a whole, how that plays together, right? How the front end and back end plays together. You start getting some experience with what do those requests mean, those stateless requests. What do you need to serve up as a host for your front end code to deliver it to the client? Something simple, but once you experience that whole package as a project, your level of knowledge just skyrockets, and especially when you're talking about going to apply for a job and breaking into the industry. The onboarding process, right, for a company to say, okay, I want to take on this developer, this front-end developer, we're looking to fill some maybe junior positions or start out positions, right? How are we going to evaluate these applicants and decide, do they have the level of knowledge of the skill to come on board? And one of the biggest factors is the cost of onboarding, right? And it's the concept of how much is it going to take a company to get somebody ramped up to start working on a day-to-day basis on projects, right? You may went to the boot camp, learned how to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript, learned JavaScript really well, learned CSS, responsive design, semantic markup, maybe you got all that, right? But if you haven't had experience with a project and what that means to work on that code, things like version control and working with the team to check in code and how that equates to connecting to the back end and stuff like that, the company is going to have to spend that time and resource to train you to get you prepped to do that. But if you have that experience, especially if you played with a project, you can come in and understand these things. Now you can talk the same lingo. The teaching and onboarding is so much quicker for a company to be able to do that, and they're going to recognize that in an applicant. So it's a big benefit to be able to do that, even if it's just as simple as just the backend just doing the hello world, kind of some static data back to you. You've got that experience now of how your front end code is tying into some back end code within a project. Yeah,
that's really interesting, because I know the Fire Bootcamp that we run here at SSW, the one that I came to, the bootcamp, the actual half the bootcamp is spent doing a real life project, which means you've got version control and Scrum meetings every week, and it makes for total chaos, and you actually probably don't learn as much CSS and HTML and JavaScript and all that stuff as you could if you just spent the whole 9 weeks purely focused on learning theory. But when you come out of it, you've done lots of check-ins, and you've had fights with team members over who over checked in over the top of someone else and all of those things. And so it's interesting that you say that, that those things are so important when you go into going for a job. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. But for me, it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of how it worked. And even from the get-go, there was that story. So yeah, I'd have to agree that, you know, if you haven't got that side of it sorted out as a company, it would take a lot of time to upskill somebody to, because it's like another world of development. You understand kind of front-end development, but just having that package of understanding, you know, version control and, you know, how agile methodologies and those things all come together, there's a lot of learning just in that team management as well. So yeah, there's heaps to learn there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about, do you want to learn and then do this stuff on your own and play with stuff, or do you want to get into the career and find a position at a company? If you're going to do that, these are all those other skills that come into play, right? Mm-hmm. And just like you said, I mean, even as you're going through it, let's say you're doing it in a boot camp like you did, and it feels crazy and everything's scattered and out of control, you're learning so much by just going through that experience. I mean, you're picking up terminology and discussion points, and then you're just going through that ringer. I mean, we all went through that ringer. You know, your first run at source control, your first run at Scrum process or whatever. I mean, you've got through that already, right? But again, you're going to experience that at one point or another coming on board. So it's great that you got that opportunity to do that prior, because it is such a big key for companies looking for developers to come on board if they've already had that experience. It just makes that conversation, even if you haven't become an expert in it, it makes the conversation easier. So as you're training, I do a lot of training at our company for people that we bring on, and just being able to talk the same lingo and not have to go into the backstory and explanation of those particular things, and just have that conversation speeds up that process so much more.
Yeah. So if someone's coming from that angle of, I've done a boot camp or I'm about to do a boot camp, and they're looking for work, I guess if you're looking to do a boot camp somewhere, I guess that should be a big part of your selection criteria, is looking for one that has those sorts of things in it. Because for me, when I was looking for a boot camp, I was like, I can watch Pluralsight all day long, and I can get, you know, the best teachers in the world like yourself to learn this content from. But there wasn't that much excellent stuff on there about how to work in a team and how to do Scrum, because it's kind of something you have to do as a practice. It's not something you can kind of watch and repeat. It's this dynamic workplace thing. So is that something someone should be looking out for when they're going for a boot camp?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. Yeah, because you could learn that stuff. I mean, you could watch stuff and learn it till you're blue in the face, and it's great for picking up those terms and those things. But yeah, that is a team thing that you have to kind of experience as a team, and have to have more than plus one person, right, to be able to do that. So yeah, I think it would be a great avenue, a great thing to look forward to in terms of if somebody's scouting out, what boot camp do I want to go to, right? What do they offer that sort of thing, right? Do they offer pair programming? Are you going to get a chance to work in a team with other people on a day-to-day basis on projects, or are you isolated and maybe working remotely, but totally by yourself, right? And just learning and learning the stuff, or yeah, if you're taking courses, you know, and learning stuff from videos online, you are kind of isolated in your own world, and you know, you'll learn a bunch of stuff, and depending on how you pick that up, maybe very advantageous, but ultimately getting that experience to interact with other human beings while you go through this process, yeah, is a big benefit. So I would say, you know, if you're looking for a boot camp, you're looking for some training to ramp yourself up and getting into this industry, find ones where you have an opportunity to pair program or to do some type of Scrum or team, you know, project management type of stuff, whether that be agile or whatever, just to get that interaction, especially when it comes to version control and multiple people working on a project, and what does that mean? How do you do that together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually makes me think of a question I got asked last week from someone who's interested in doing a boot camp here in Sydney, and they said, Duncan, from your experience, what was, so I'm going to ask this question to you and see what you think, Justin, and the question was, what do you think is more important? Is it more important for me to spend my time, you know, on Pluralsight or something similar, learning all the hardcore kind of fundamentals, or should I just focus all my time on trying to get into a boot camp and doing a boot camp? Which one's going to be more beneficial for me in terms of getting a job specifically? Is it a boot camp, or is it just like having the knowledge?
Man, I have to say, I guess it depends on what the curriculum of the boot camp is, right? If it's just those 3 languages and kind of get you going on those, then you're going to need so much more to really kind of have a advantage as you try and get yourself into a position at a company. So really, I guess if the boot camp's very focused, then it's probably a combination of the 2. If the boot camp is spread out enough to cover these other topics and really kind of get you a feeling for all those things, then that's possibly enough to get you going and bringing in. I mean, ultimately it comes down to where you're trying to apply at, right? And what they're looking for. I think there's so much opportunity out there for so many companies, whether you're looking for doing it in a company, doing it freelance, working on projects here and there, that really there's an avenue for both, I guess. But ultimately it's coming out with a learning program that's going to give you the opportunity to learn the focus languages of the front end, but also the landscape of the web as a whole, and all the way down to project management and that sort of thing. So whether that be supplementing it with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or finding all the information that you need. That was one thing I hope with my course on Pluralsight, is that it's kind of going to be like a guidance to, hey, watch this. It'll give you all the information, all the pieces, components that you need to go learn. And whether you learn that from other videos, other courses, whether you learn that in your boot camp, wherever you want to learn that, here's the key things that you've got to kind of come to the table prepared with if you want to break in. So,
yeah. So what are the first steps someone should be taking then, if they feel like they're getting the knowledge and they're kind of got some skills and they want to make those steps to start applying for jobs or looking for jobs? What should they be doing there? What's their first steps?
So I think number one of the biggest things is get some projects going. Maybe one project, a couple projects, play with some stuff. Get that experience of front end, back end together. There's so many avenues to be able to do that now. Get on GitHub, set up a small sample project, build a site with some information on it. Doing that sort of thing gives the employers an opportunity to explore information about you, right? To discover what you've done on their own before they even start interviewing you. You get a chance to really lay the groundwork and impression of what your skills are and what you're coming to the table with when you do these sort of things, right? So get a project set up on GitHub, do some check-ins, do the process of trying out the version control, show you have experience with that. Get exposure to those back-end and front-end pieces, how they play together. Get a presence online. If you can go on to, take your knowledge, go on something like Stack Overflow, right? Ask some questions on there as you're working through your stuff. Find some places where you could potentially maybe make some answers to questions, right? Have a footprint there, have a presence there. These are all things that help you set up your profile to potential employers as they're looking for you. And these are the things where you can show, I've dived into this stuff. This stuff's important to me. I've started to get some experience with these things. I have an understanding of what these things are, right, beyond just the languages and the syntax of the languages. So really building kind of that profile of yourself. And it's not too hard to do, you've gone to a boot camp, you've probably worked on some projects. Most likely you probably put those up already on GitHub, expand upon those, or find something that, maybe you have a club or something, or you're coming into the industry. So they're not looking for expertise, but they're looking for, again, that onboarding is so key, the cost of onboarding, right? How quick can we get somebody up and running? They know, we know that we can teach somebody. If they have the basic skill set and they've shown that they have this aptitude to want to learn, right? And want to absorb this knowledge and get in there and play with stuff and live in this world of change that we have in web development, right? And embrace that. And show that they've taken the steps to try and understand all that and bring that together, and they just need some guidance to take it further, then employer's going to recognize that and go, okay, we can bring them on and we'll teach them. They're going to grow, but they'll have a leg up on doing that because of that fact that we can talk the talk and the terms, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Excellent. So should someone be fussy when they're going for a job? Should you, when you're looking for work, and maybe even your first job in the industry, should you just take whatever you can get, be it in a startup or in a company with other people, or should you be picky? Because I kind of think, I've been really fortunate to start work with a bunch of people who have years of experience, and it's great to be able to learn from them. And I would have done the same process over again. Do you think that's important, or people should just be like, oh, as soon as you can get a foot in the door, whatever you can get, just go for it?
I think that really the state of our industry now is there's so much opportunity that it's not an industry yet where you're like, I got to take any opportunity I can get because I got to start getting experience and showing experience, right? Job experience. I don't think that our industry's at that level yet. So you do have an opportunity to kind of pick and choose some more, especially with the ability to work remotely. There's so many avenues to get started in this industry that, you should take some time, try and figure out, look for things. The opportunity for mentorship and learning, that's what you're really going to get when you start breaking into the industry is you want to take this first position and you really want to focus on, I need to learn as much as I can from this thing. When I get in there, I'm going to help contribute, but you're in a state where your skill set is going to need to ramp up rapidly, right? And so look for, is this a job that's conducive to providing an environment that's going to allow me to do that, right? Are there people on that team that are excited about educating and training and teaching? Is that opportunity there that you're going to be able to get in there and learn from these people? Is that environment there? Do they pair program? Do they work as a team? Is there a lot of interaction? That sort of thing. And you should absolutely ask those sort of questions. Do you interact as a team, or are people just kind of isolated to work on their own thing? To get a feel for, look, you're going to have, it's an impressionable period, right, for a front-end developer as they first come into the industry. And it's going to be hard because you won't really know what is it that I need to learn, right? So you're not going to be able to look at a position and go, well, I could learn that in this position, but not over here at this position, because you don't really know what it is you need to learn, right? So you just kind of got to go with it and say, okay, are they team oriented? And if so, okay, we'll hit it, and I'll try and learn what I can from that position. But also keep in mind that you have to be self-educating yourself as well in this industry. So much change, you have to go out and try and do. As you know, that's how I came in. Years and years ago, at a time when everything was so raw, I had to go find answers and find those sort of things. It's just part of our industry. You got to be a self-learner and be driven to get that thirst for knowledge on your own. So it's going to be a combo between that and what you can pull out of that first job. So don't rush it. Don't feel like you need to just take whatever's there, but know that you're just going to, wherever you land, you're going to learn something, and just be prepared to figure out how to pull out the most of it and then go from there.
Yeah. I can definitely resonate that from my experience recently, is that because I was ambitious to go learn extra things, and in particular it happened to be AngularJS, and it just happened to be good timing to learn a bunch of that I got opportunities to get on projects in the company where I am at, because we had lots of new projects starting in that technology. And it's not something that someone took me by hand and showed me how to do it. So I went online, I watched everything I could find about it, and watched everyone's courses, like your own course. And when it came around who's free at the moment in the company to be able to do this project, and they were like, oh, Duncan, we need to pair him up with someone, but let's put him on this project because he's got the experience with Angular. So definitely that self-learning and being able to learn what's current really was an advantage for me. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to have to wrap it up here, but so if you'd like to give some final tips, or what would be your top 3 things going forward from here someone should do if they're looking to move into a front-end development?
Sorry, I missed that piece. It cut out for a minute there. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to summarize this conversation today and say, what are the top 3 things someone should do if they're looking to get a job as a front-end developer? They've got a little bit of experience, maybe been to a boot camp. What are the top 3 things they should do?
Okay, number 1 would be play around, get a project going on your own, right? Full of, like a little mini website, that sort of thing. Get a project going, get it hosted somewhere. As far as your version control, get experience with that, right? So you can get a feel for the entire project process and how that ties together. Number 2 would be start formulating an online presence. Places like Stack Overflow, start asking questions on there as you're working through stuff. See if you can answer some questions on there as well. That sort of thing. Number 3, let's see.
Maybe they should watch your course on Pluralsight.
Yeah, they could do that. I would highly recommend that. I hope that would be very helpful for them to get more of an in-depth knowledge of all the other areas that they can start picking up knowledge on. That sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. That would be number 3. Good suggestion. Thanks.
All right, excellent. So thanks very much for your time today, Justin. And it's always a pleasure to have a chat, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Yes, thanks, Duncan. I appreciate it a lot. It's always fun talking shop with you.
All right, cheers. Have a good day.
Cheers. Bye.